you can't really fail at it unless you buy the wrong stock or just get excited at the wrong time. And I would like to just spend just a couple of minutes giving you a little perspective on how you might think about investments as opposed to the tendency to focus on what's happening today or even this minute as you go through. And to help me in doing that, I'd like to go back through a little personal history, and we will start. I have here a New York Times of March 12th, 1942. I'm a little behind on my reading. And if you go back to that time, it was just about 3 months since we got involved in a war which we were losing at that point. The newspaper headlines were filled with bad news from the Pacific, and I've taken just a couple of the headlines from the days preceding March 11th, which I'll explain. It's kind of a momentous day for me. And so you can see these headlines. We've got slide 2 up there, I believe. We were in trouble, big trouble, in the Pacific. It was only going to be a couple months later that the Philippines fell, but here we were getting bad news. We might go to slide 3 for March 9th. Hope you can read the headlines anyway. The price of the paper is 3 cents, incidentally. On March 10th, when again, the news was bad. Full clearing path to Australia. And it was like, the stock market had been reflecting this, and I'd been watching a stock called City Service Preferred Stock, which had sold at $84 the previous year. It had sold at $55, and now it was down to $40 on March 10th. So that night, despite these headlines, I said to my dad, I'd like you to buy me three shares of City Service Preferred the next day. And that was all I had. I mean, that was my capital accumulated over the previous 5 years or thereabouts. And so my dad the next morning bought 3 shares. Well, let's take a look at what happened the next day. Let's go to the next slide, please. And it was not a good day. The stock market, the Dow Jones Industrials broke 100 on the downside. Now, they were down 2.28%, as you see, but that was the equivalent of about a 500-point drop now. So I am in school wondering what is going on. Of course, what happened, the stock that was at 39, my dad bought my stock right away in the morning because I'd asked him to, my 3 shares. And so I paid the high for the day, that 38 and a quarter. And by the end of the day, it was down to 37, which was really kind of characteristic of my timing in stocks that was going to appear in future years. But it was on what was then called the New York Curb Exchange, then became the American Stock Exchange. To the next slide, please. You'll see that the stock did rather well. You can see where I bought it, 38 and a quarter. And then the stock went on actually to eventually be called by the City Service Company for over $200 a share. But this is not a happy story. But we can leave behind the City Service story. And I would like you to, again, imagine yourself back on March 11th of 1942. And as I say, things were looking bad in the European theater as well as what was going on. Everybody in this country knew America was going to win the war. I mean, and we knew that the American system had been working well since 1776. So if you'll turn to the next slide, I'd like you to imagine you had invested $10,000 and you put that money in an index fund. We didn't have index funds. Basic premise, just like in buying a farm, you buy it to hold throughout your lifetime and depend. And you look to the output of the farm to determine whether you made a wise investment. And let's say instead you decided to put the $10,000 in and hold a piece of American business and never look at another stock quote, never listen to another person give you advice or anything on the sort. I want you to think how much money you might have now. And now that you've got a number in your head, let's go to the next slide and we'll get the answer. You'd have $51 million and you wouldn't have had to do anything. You wouldn't have to understand accounting. All you had to do was figure that America was going to do well over time, that we would overcome the current difficulties, and that if America did well, American business would do well. You didn't have to pick out winning stocks. You didn't have to pick out a winning time or anything of the sort. You basically just had to make one investment decision in your life. And that wasn't the only time to do it. I mean, I could go back and pick other times that would work out to even greater gains. But as you listen to the questions and answers we give today, just remember that the overriding question is, how is American business going to do over your investing lifetime? I would like to make one other comment because it's a little bit interesting. Let's say you've taken that $10,000 and you listen to the prophets of doom and gloom around you, and you'll get that constantly throughout your life. And instead you use the $10,000 to buy gold. Now for your $10,000, you would have been able to buy about 300 ounces of gold. And while the businesses were reinvesting in more plants and new inventions came along, you would go down every year look in your safe deposit box, and you'd have your 100 ounces of gold, and you could look at it, and you could fondle it, and you could, whatever you wanted to do with it. But it didn't produce anything. It was never going to produce anything. And what would you have today? You would have 300 ounces of gold, just like you had in March of 1942. And it would be worth approximately $400,000. So if you decided to go with a non-productive asset, gold, instead of a productive asset, which actually was earning more money and reinvesting and paying dividends and maybe purchasing stock, whatever it might be, you would now have over 100 times the value of what you would have had with a non-productive asset, and get scared by the headlines or something of the sort. It's just remarkable to me that we have operated in this country with the greatest tailwind at our back that you can imagine. It's an investor's haven. I mean, you can't really fail at it unless you buy the wrong stock or just get excited at the wrong time.